Welcome to Hotel Leaders, hosted by Peter Demore. With over 25 years in the hotel industry, as a manager, educator, entrepreneur, and now an independent voice, he brings a balanced and insightful perspective on the world's greatest hotels. It's time to check in.
Nayara is a beautiful luxury hotel group built on a rare promise. Turn extreme nature into emotional calm and deliver that calm with 5-star repeatability. Today, we're joined by someone who has incredible hotel knowledge, experience, and has been an integral part of starting and growing this now international luxury hotel group, and is Nayara's group digital marketing guru. A very warm welcome to Mr. Albert Ghitis.
Hey, Peter, how are you? Thanks so much for having me on.
Very well. Thank you for joining us. I can see from the background there, you're in Costa Rica.
I am in the lush rainforest. Yeah, this is I'm in my room. This is our backyard, and you can't see behind me, but there's a hot springs plunge pool right off camera.
Wow, absolutely beautiful. Look, I thought we might start by talking a little bit about the marketing side. I know hotel marketing is a rapidly evolving area of hotels at the moment. Maybe if you can talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with the hotel group and how that translates into where the hotel is now.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually here at the hotel helping run a branding exercise that's basically kind of looking at really the whole brand, the brand promise, what differentiates us from others, and then also trying to find kind of the unique identities for each of the properties. So, for example, right now I'm at Nayara Springs, and this is really the wellness flagship. Our whole promise is built around nature-based wellness. And by that, I don't mean just wellness that happens in nature, but that the nature itself is the wellness. So I reference the hot springs plunge pools, the fact that you're in the rainforest in general, and that's actually the whole nature-based wellness angle, something that I like to call kind of wellness by colors. So you have the therapeutic benefits of green environments, the ocean environments, and the blue. In Atacama, you have both the brown, which is really just the stillness and the desert itself, as well as the night sky. So that there's a black color wellness, nature component, and it's not just being in a beautiful, relaxing, natural setting. There's scientific evidence to suggest that nature has therapeutic properties, and not just for relaxation, but even for mental health and a myriad of other a myriad of other factors that nature can actually benefit. But sticking with Spring, so wellness is a big part of the brand, but we have 6 properties. 5 out of the 6 are leading hotels of the world. Springs is specifically Relais Chateau. So for us, the culinary angle is also one of our key tenets, and that is not just Michelin quality fine dining food, but the whole idea of a taste of place, of 0-kilometer dining. That is food that comes from the areas, from our own organic farm, from the farms in the Arenal area. And then I guess the third pillar, since we're sticking with Springs, is really the romantic angle. This is an adults-only property. Both Nayara Springs and Nayara Bocas del Toro on the Caribbean coast of Panama are adults only, and we really focus on romance, honeymoons, that kind of thing. But to answer your initial question about marketing, I've only been working with it's a family business, but I've only been here for 3 years. And even in that time, SEO changed, right? It went from search engine optimization to search everywhere optimization. And then went from SEO to GEO and AEO and EEAT and all the other fun acronyms. I started doing social media, which 3 years ago was branding, maybe something that we had to do, but now it is a big part of the strategy. From social media, I very quickly went into vibe coding, and now basically doing website stuff, all the blog stuff, newsletters, social, basically all of digital marketing. And, today, for the most part, marketing is digital marketing. We certainly have some more traditional avenues that we explore, but for the most part, it's digital. So it's just become, and showing up when someone asks, what's the best luxury resort in Costa Rica, Central America, being basically the first choice when people are searching in ChatGPT and even Google now. I don't know if you saw today, I believe, basically
Yes.
kind of ended the traditional search thing, and now you're having conversations, right? So it's not focusing on keywords; it's focusing on those long tail search terms, and being, not only showing up, but then when people ask, oh, like, is this a good hotel? Or the reputation is what has made us, visible when it comes to this kind of next stage of generative engine optimization. So I'm basically here to make sure that we show up. When people look for us, we show up.
Look, you're definitely ahead of the curve there. It is changing right now, as you mentioned. We've gone from a world where you look for a property or group through Google with a few keywords, now to key phrases in AI. You mentioned Google AI, powered by Gemini in the background, is happening right now as we're talking. This is a really hot topic at the moment. The next area I was really interested in was the origin story for Nayara. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. It's obviously gone to, it's a relatively young company, maybe a decade or two old, but it's gone to such heights already. Where did the hotel chain begin?
Yeah, so I wish I could say that I had a large part in growing the brand, but by the time I got here, we had already gone to, basically we had just opened the sixth hotel, which was the Nayara Bocas del Toro. But like you said, it's just under, we're actually about to hit 2 decades, which is kind of crazy to believe. But I mean, we began in Costa Rica with one small hotel, 20 rooms, $149 a night. And then we basically just continue to slowly expand. We added 2 properties to Costa Rica, including most recently the Nayara Tented Camp, which is kind of, I don't want to say our flagship because all the hotels are flagships, but this is really kind of the one where we earned our laurels and the one that really received, best hotels and travel and leisure and Condé Nast. And, the whole reforestation story is something that really put us on the map and bringing back sloths and wildlife and creating these wildlife corridors. Basically a brand that began in Costa Rica now is in 2 other countries. In Chile, we first expanded to the Atacama Desert. Then we expanded to Easter Island, which is obviously, the most isolated island in the Pacific, but also part of Chile. And then most recently, Panama's Caribbean coast in Bocas del Toro. And we're opening 2 new ones in Costa Rica, very likely one in Yucatan in Mexico. And then, eventually the idea is to expand to the United States. And we have a bunch of other projects in the air. But yeah, what was a very, what is still a small brand is one that is rapidly expanding. And expanding in the right way too. Where I think a lot of brands lose their essence when they try to expand and they kind of overstretch themselves. We're only expanding to environments that have this kind of, the nature element, the pristine ecosystem, places where sustainability is key, where nature-based wellness can happen, that have these, what we call experiences rooted in place. So, for example, you can only see the Moai on Easter Island. A lot of the rainforest adventures you can only do here. Basically experiences that you can do, it really experiential travel. The whole idea of, and I think we've spoken about this off camera, the idea of people don't really don't want things, they want experiences, right? And unique ones. Yep. that are memories that you build. So that's that promise is what we're trying to deliver on, offering experiences, curated experiences, that basically with trained guides, to explore parts of the world and parts of these areas, in a way that creates memories that hopefully last a lifetime.
Yeah, look, these are truly memorable areas that you're in, very special places in the world. But what I really like is the respectful way that you treat these special places. In maybe just in Costa Rica to start with, Are you able to give some examples of exactly what Nayara does that is beyond sustainable, maybe regenerative and actually transformative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I began with nature-based wellness, and that's kind of the direction we're heading in. But we are a company that was built on sustainability. And to your point, sustainability is no longer enough. We've gone from sustainability, which is just basically maintaining the environment, to actually regenerating it. And I mentioned it briefly with the idea of reforestation, but where it's heading is, you hit it on the head, is transformative travel. So it's the idea of not just doing regeneration work where we are, but expanding that outward, and then also including the guest in the process. And that's the kind of the project that I'm spearheading now in Costa Rica. We basically reforested more than 40,000 plants, trees, created wildlife corridors, brought back sloths, monkeys, birds. I mean, a whole ecosystem. And now we're taking that idea in the Caribbean, and basically what began as coral reef restoration is now really ocean habitat restoration. So we're expanding, building reefs and bringing back aquatic wildlife, not just on our site, but outward into the archipelago. And it's kind of the same idea of basically, it's not just having something pretty for guests to look at, or nature for guests to look at, but making an impact on the greater region. And then I tend to focus a lot on the environment, but just as important, if not more important, is the community piece, right? So I mean, we do, and everyone, of course, likes to say they do the community piece, right? And that's kind of for PR, but for us, it's essential. 95% of our staff is from the La Fortuna area here in Costa Rica. We are, we work very closely with an orphanage that we sponsor, schools that we sponsor and build. And more than that, what we provide here is not just a job, it's a career path, it's a life path. Take, for example, the general manager, Jairo Quesada, began as the front desk. He began at front desk, and now he's basically managing the 3 different properties here in Costa Rica. We have so many stories like that. And, and not only in your field, but for example, say you're at the front desk, but you're interested in wine, we'll do a full training program so that they can get into that field. And our lead sommelier also, I think, began as a bellhop. So the cross-training, the education that we provide, English classes, and then also resources for their families, right? Housing, we're launching a really big housing project in the La Fortuna area, mostly for single mothers. It's basically the idea of the community piece and the environment piece being 2 parts of this whole kind of beyond sustainability, rubric, I guess. And that's something that we're doing in all of our hotels, and that's something that, that basically really defines our brand.
Look, it's fantastic. And not every hotel brand does that. In fact, I don't know if there are that many brands that do exactly what you're doing. It's really,
or if they do, they do it for the PR reasons, right? They do it because they need
Correct,
to,
yeah.
not because it's part of their essence, right?
But you can really feel the heart with your hotel group. And look, from a hotel perspective, from a personal perspective as well, it's really heartening to see what you're doing from a number of ways. They're not just for the hotels, for the environments, but as you said, for the communities as well. They're long-lasting, like you said, transformative changes. It's beyond sustainability, and I think there are lessons for all of us there.
Well, and the lesson is a tricky one, right? Because I think we also have mentioned this before, that tourism can be a double-edged sword, right? There's a lot of places that don't want tourism because they're going to destroy the environment. They're going to bring, kind of destructive elements. But, for us, of course, it's walking that line. But even take this town of La Fortuna. This was an area full of subsistence farmers. When tourism came, basically created livelihoods for this, enormous community. We are now the largest employer in the whole La Fortuna area. And even, something that Costa Rica did, and hopefully is a model now for other nations, is, Costa Rica was green before green was a thing. They put an onus and a priority on protecting their the natural environment. And we were really a beneficiary of what Costa Rica was already doing. So it's almost like we basically kind of took the Costa Rica strategy, and both Costa Rica and us kind of grew up together emphasizing the environment and the things that we knew were, crucial, especially today with everything that's going on. So it was really kind of like a union of like-minded, I guess, a state in the case of Costa Rica, and a resort brand, but we couldn't be prouder to be associated with Costa Rica and the incredible success story that it's been. No army, right? I think it's something like, all the, basically, I think, if I'm not mistaken, more than 95% of the energy is through renewable resources, water, wind, solar, and we're really just an extension of the Costa Rica narrative, the brand there. And it's also led to, as I'm sure you've seen, happiest country in the world every year, the blue zones in Nicoya and the peninsula there, where people live till 100, on average. And so basically, I mean, we've been really blessed to have been part of this kind of Costa Rica story, and an extension of everything Costa Rica has done to be a world leader in sustainability and regeneration.
100%. And you've taken that philosophy and you've gone beyond Costa Rica.
It was Atacama, Hangaroa, and Easter Island, and then Panama. But Hangaroa it's interesting to stay in Hangaroa for a second, because it kind of shows the community piece more. So saying that the community piece is just as important, in Nayara, Hangaroa on Easter Island, we're the only hotel on the island that is actually part owned by a Rapa Nui family. So what we do there, of course, there's environmental things that are important. We've done solar panel projects, we've done beach cleanups, and helped also the reefs there. Just like we're doing in Panama, we're doing a lot to support the ocean habitats there. But Hangaroa, it's really cultural preservation. It is maintaining this really ancestral culture, these Rapa Nui people, who basically not just preserving the moai, but keeping this culture alive. And the fact that we're partners with an indigenous Rapa Nui family allows us to do it in a really sincere way. And it's not us; they're telling their narrative, right? It's their narrative that we're here to help. They own the land, and we're a true partner. So, I mean, you can even see in some of my other podcasts that I've interviewed Taumana, who's, kind of the son of this family that, basically now is in charge of guest relations. We're doing authentic Rapa Nui dancing at the hotel, but in a way that is not exploitative, right? It is them telling their story the way they want to tell it. And we are here basically to assist.
And we'll have links down in the description to some of those videos, because yes, there's a whole myriad of wonderful things that are going on behind the scenes there as well, in terms of that history and the preservation in Rapa Nui. Maybe if we jump to, I know it's one of your favorite hotels in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Can you tell us a little bit about the environment there and the hotel and how wonderful it is?
Well, yeah, so I'm a space nerd. So, I mean, for me, I think there are very few dark sky, kind of labeled dark sky environments on the planet. Atacama is one of them. And it's not just one of the best stargazing places on the planet. It is the best stargazing place on the planet. We are the only hotel in the area in the Atacama Desert that's actually in an oasis in the Salar Mountains. Basically, because of that, there's no light pollution. The Atacama Desert is the driest non-polar region on the planet. So the driest desert, and the driest after the North Pole and the South Pole, we're the driest area. So the altitude, the low humidity, the dryness, and the fact that we're an oasis means that you can see this night sky. We have our on-site observatory, guided tours, this big telescope, but you don't even really need the telescope. You look up at that sky, and you can actually see that there are stars that are red, stars that are blue, stars that are white. You can actually see the colors. And as an example of how crazy the night sky is, we see constellations now as, there's those 5 stars. We can maybe make a bow and arrow with them, and that's, Orion. But the ancient Atacameños, there were so many stars that their constellations were actually the dark spaces between the stars. So basically, there were so many stars that the constellations were the gaps, because basically there were such few gaps. And that, their constellations, of course, were the animals in the area: llamas, vicuñas, flamingos. And that's just one part, right? The stargazing for me is huge. But I mean, this desert is it is literally Mars on Earth. And I say that it's not, hyperbole. We have Mars missions being, NASA training for Mars missions in the Atacama Desert. We have every single large space observatory has their own observatories in Atacama. The European Space Agency, NASA, I think there's something like a dozen different, international space organizations who have observatories there. But on the Mars piece, the terrain is so foreign. You have these places like Rainbow Mountain, Valley of the Moon, all these just insane geographic landscapes that look like nothing else on Earth. And the reason that they even do Mars training missions there is because it is so arid and so inhospitable to life that they are searching for what kind of life, in some cases extremophiles and other kind of primitive life forms that can actually survive in these environments. And we think those are the kinds of life that we would find on Mars or on the moon or on any other kind of planetary body that doesn't have the nutrients or the resources that we think are necessary for life. So it is really a training ground for Mars missions. And I mean, the proof is that literally NASA is training for Mars missions in the Atacama Desert, right? So I mean, it is just an incredible landscape. And I think a lot of people don't really know about the Atacama Desert. They know the Sahara or the Gobi, but the Atacama Desert is the driest desert in the world and possibly the most striking and the most beautiful.
Look, it sounds fantastic. I haven't been to that area of the world, but it's definitely something that I think people should consider, being so unique, so wonderful. The stars, my gosh, like the stories that you're telling there about, I guess the locals having constellations of the dark spaces between the stars rather than the stars themselves. Fantastic.
Well, and to take it back to sustainability, what we have done in Atacama is what we did in Bocas. Basically, we are not connected to a national grid there. In Bocas also, we built on a private mangrove island, created our entire infrastructure based on solar rainwater harvesting. In Atacama, we have this enormous solar panel project and basically provide our own energy, right? And
wow.
To talk about the sustainability piece, I mentioned the environmental, the wildlife, the community, but then the important piece is the verification, right? So we are Green Globe certified in the 4 hotels that have Green Globe certification, and Hangaroa and Atacama are now S certification, which is the highest designation from the state of Chile. So basically, we're doing the things, and now these are the government entities that are giving us the highest possible certification for doing that work. It's basically the confirmation that what we're doing is sincere, right? And the whole idea of being an oasis, it was the only way to do it. We're off in the middle of the desert, a good distance from town. So basically creating this kind of off-grid network of for electricity, for water, for all our other resources is something that kind of differentiates us from our competitors there.
A slightly trickier question now. I'd mentioned it in a previous conversation we had. I'd been to Hawaii a number of times. Beautiful place. I absolutely love it. But there's definitely been some degradation there with the volume of tourism, particularly in the heavily touristed areas, Waikiki and so forth, and particularly to the coral type environments. So I guess, as you alluded to before, there's a bit of a fear if we grow tourism too much, particularly if there's less respectful hoteliers that come into the areas that you're in, that it could degrade the environment and wreck it for everyone, the locals, the well-behaving hotels and so forth. This might not be a question you know the answer to, but are there any ways that we can protect places like, for example, Easter Island, Rapa Nui?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, right? And back to the whole double-edged sword of tourism. There has to be a real sincere effort, not just on the part of the hotel owners and management, but also on the part of the guests. We don't want guests to come here who don't care about the environment, who are gonna, leave their trash everywhere. I think it's almost like, it's a partnership between the hotel and the guests and the community to be able to, show the beauty of these places in a way that gets people, feel engaged in wanting to protect them, But if you want people to be engaged, they have to see it, right? It's almost like when you go on safari in Africa, in some ways, yes, you're encroaching on this kind of pristine environment. But if they see elephants and wildlife and that makes them go home and now help try to preserve this wildlife, then it was worth it. But it's a fine line. And
everyone has a stake then in wanting to preserve that environment, and it gets preserved. Yeah.
Well, and then for the community there, of course, right? Rapa Nui, is this kind of very isolated island. That's a very small island with a small population. So, in some ways it's, you don't want that many tourists to come, but at the same time, tourism has a really positive impact on the economy, right? And provides jobs. So even in La Fortuna, this area before hospitality, not just us, but before hospitality in general, these were people living on the brink of subsistence, and now they have careers, right? And but it's a fine line, right? And a lot of people don't place the importance on it, right? So it's not an easy job, So I guess to answer your question, there's no easy answers. It requires a lot of effort, and it's a nuanced thing to do. So I think, but it's the only way we know how to do it, right? It's kind of in our DNA, and that's just speaking about this branding exercise that we've been doing. We want to be a force for good. Kind of taking the idea of what Patagonia did, and being that for luxury hospitality. And hopefully what we're doing with the coral reefs and the ocean habitats in Bocas, the reforestation in Costa Rica, preserving culture and night skies in Hangaroa and Atacama, can be a blueprint for other luxury hotels to follow, right? We can't do it alone. We hope to be an inspiration and a partner in the process, and bring about change, be that force for good that I just mentioned. So again, it's not an easy job to do, and it's easy to speak in platitudes, but I think we've done the work, and I think it has been recognized by international bodies.
Yes. And you spoke a little bit before about potential future growth as well, which is wonderful to see as well, as new hotels have opened and will look to open in the future. Is that something you're able to speak about today?
Yeah, so there's some that we can certainly speak of. For example, we are, in Manuel Antonio in Costa Rica, and in the kind of Cacique Papagayo area in Costa Rica, we are, moving full steam ahead with finally getting kind of the beach hotels that we need in Costa Rica. Right now, everyone thinks Costa Rica and they think beach, but we're actually in the interior, we're in the rainforest, but we're finally going to have that other leg of the journey, which is basically being on the beach. And in Manuel Antonio, it's very unique because it's a national park. It's like really where rainforest meets the reef. You have both the rainforest, the wildlife, famous for monkeys, but then it's on this incredible jutting, peninsula of beach right on the water there. But not only in Costa Rica, but in every other place that we're going to, they're all going to have those similar things. They're going to be in pristine nature. We're going to not just not interfere with the nature, but actively help regenerate it, right? And right now we're in Latin America, but we see our growth being anywhere where we can be a force for good, anywhere that we can, build not on top of the nature, but within the nature and actually grow it out. So I think, the future looks bright, and we're, full steam ahead with expanding, but doing it in the right way. Right, doing it in a conscientious way, and in a way that helps the communities, helps the environment, doesn't just sustain them, but actually grows them, regenerates them, and that's kind of going to be the thing that needs to be part of any future project.
I think so. Look, Albert, I've researched. Maybe this is the last question. I've researched some of the top luxury hotel origin stories, the timing, the vision that grows with this success that these hotel companies have had in the past. I get that same feeling with Nayara. You're winning awards. Last time you told me that you don't build hotels, you reveal places. Lessons for other hoteliers who are also wanting to operate in unique natural environments. I guess you've seen a lot of things. What sort of things do you think we should be doing more of? You've spoke a little bit about that already, but I guess if you can maybe extend that response to where you sort of see the industry going.
Sure. I mean, generally speaking, it's knowing that you can do both, right? You can have $1,000 a night room in nature, but actually help the nature rather than hurting it. It's doing it in a way. I mean, even take Bocas del Toro. We did 5 different environmental studies. I think it was, I forget the number, but something like $100,000 to make sure that we were not hurting the mangroves, that if we did have to just, cut a mangrove, that we would replant 10. And same thing here. If we cut down one tree, we replant 10. So there's a way to do it. May not be the easiest way, but it can be done. And I think that's just the environment that you need to get the buy-in of the community. It's your earlier question. If the local inhabitants of the community thinks that we are in here to degrade the environment, to basically upset the balance, then it's never going to work. So you have to get the buy-in from the local community. You have to, take your staff majority from that local community and give the community that you're part of a sense of pride in working for these hotels and in wanting both, the hotel and their families and their communities to all succeed together, right? It's kind of like the Costa Rica model, when we win together or we lose together. And you can't, the idea is that you can't really fight one battle. It's basically, you need to have all parts of the equation and all the stakeholders be part of the success.
Wonderful. Albert, it's been lovely chatting to you today, and I hope to have future conversations. Thank you so much for today.
Appreciate it. Happy to be back anytime.
With Nayara, location isn't a single city, it's a thesis. Pick a landscape so powerful it becomes the story. Then build hospitality systems that let guests inhabit it without friction. The group's original heart is Costa Rica, in the Arenal region. Rainforest, volcanic geography, wildlife, heat, rain, and that deeply Costa Rican rhythm of pura vida. Nayara's 3 Costa Rica resorts are physically connected by land bridges and rainforest pathways, but they're deliberately positioned as distinct experiences. Nayara Springs as adults only, Nayara Gardens, and Nayara Tented Camp for couples and families. Then the brand extends to Panama, Nayara Bocas del Toro, an adults-only overwater resort in an archipelago setting. A place designed for total disconnection and nature immersion, but with a very specific architectural signature, including an aerial beach concept that's become a talking point in luxury travel coverage. And then Chile, Nayara Alto Atacama in the Atacama Desert, and Nayara Hangaroa on Easter Island. 2 destinations with enormous geographic identity. These weren't built from scratch by Nayara. They were added through a partnership structure with Nayara marketing and overseeing operations while keeping what guests already loved and expanding international reach. So the location story isn't where are the hotels, it's what kind of places does Nayara choose? Answer, places where the landscape is strong enough to carry the brand, and the hotel's job is to choreograph access to it. Nayara's story is unusually modern, a luxury group that became globally famous within a relatively short time by being obsessive about guest feeling and by engineering nature into the product. In Costa Rica, the group built a 3-property ecosystem around Arenal. The idea wasn't to create one big resort, it was to create 3 moods, connected by rainforest, but segmented by guest psychology. That segmentation is strategic. It lets the group serve families, couples, and adults-only travellers without forcing everyone into the same rhythm. One of the most important how elements in the founding story is the relationship with nature and land stewardship. Nayara Tented Camp in particular is repeatedly used as an example in luxury travel reporting of rewilding and restoration, not as a marketing line but as real landscaping and conservation work. Condé Nast Traveller has described substantial reforestation efforts and habitat protections associated with the Nayara team, including large-scale tree planting and building around heritage trees, so the resort can exist without feeling extractive. Then comes the expansion story, and this matters because it reveals the group's strategic discipline. In Panama, Nayara Bocas del Toro entered the portfolio through a relaunch. It originally opened as Bocas Bali and then relaunched under the Nayara brand in 2022, which shows a particular growth style: acquire or partner with a unique physical asset, then apply the Nayara operating system and brand promise. In Chile, the expansion was formalized through a partnership with Tanaka, covering Alto Atacama, 42 keys, in the Atacama Desert, and Hangaroa Eco-Village and Spa, 75 keys on Easter Island. Nayara's role was to market and oversee these properties, while maintaining what guests already loved and expanding their reach internationally. So the founding story is less one hotel becomes many. It's create a repeatable luxury system, then apply it to landscapes that deserve it. If you want to understand Nayara, you need to understand leadership as a multi-layered system. Founder vision at the top, plus operators on the ground who convert that vision into repeatable guest feeling. At the ownership level, Nayara is closely associated with Albert Ghitis, who is publicly described in multiple interviews and profiles as owner/leader of Nayara Resorts and central to its growth strategy and philosophy. But in a group like Nayara, the most interesting leadership story is the operational bench, the people who hold the brand's standard on the ground, especially in remote environments. For example, Nayara Springs publicly profiles Jairo Quesada as resort manager/head of operations with a classic from the ground up leadership arc. He joined the resort on day one and rose through roles into operations leadership. That kind of internal progression matters because Nayara's brand promise is emotional warmth, and that's much harder to maintain if culture is constantly imported rather than grown. On the culinary side, Nayara's F&B leadership is also visible. Public professional profiles identify William Weiss as executive chef at Nayara Resorts in Costa Rica, and that matters because food in remote luxury isn't nice to have. It's identity, guest rhythm, and a core part of value perception. And then there's the leadership challenge, unique to Nayara's geography. These aren't hotels sitting in city supply chains. These are properties where logistics, staffing, sustainability, and guest expectations collide daily. Leadership has to run a luxury machine in places where nature is unpredictable and infrastructure is finite. That's why Nayara's leadership narrative keeps returning to a few themes in interviews and brand messaging: sustainability as operating discipline, intimacy as a deliberate design choice, and service as a culture, not a script. Because Nayara is a group. The lobby isn't one room. It's the arrival ritual that repeats across very different landscapes. In Arenal, arrival is rainforest intimacy. The hotel's job is to slow you down quickly, welcome orientation, and the first signal that nature is not outside. It's part of the property. Nayara's Costa Rica resorts are designed to make the transition from travel to calm almost immediate. In Bocas del Toro, arrival is separation, private island geography naturally creates a psychological "you've left the world" moment, which is exactly what an adult's only overwater resort sells. The property's own positioning emphasizes disconnection from the world and connection with nature, which is basically the lobby message in one line. In the Atacama, arrival is contrast. You're entering one of the world's most dramatic deserts, and the hotel is framed as an oasis, literally described as being located in a fertile oasis environment near San Pedro de Atacama. The hotel's job is to translate dramatic desert into livable luxury, with staff warmth doing as much work as the architecture. And on Easter Island, arrival is cultural gravity, the sense that you're entering not just a landscape, but a place with deep cultural story and global myth. Across all of this, Nayara's lobby is essentially the same operating move: reduce friction, increase emotional safety, and frame nature as the main character. Nayara's room strategy is one of the clearest expressions of its brand build accommodation formats that feel like private sanctuaries inside dramatic nature. In Costa Rica, the 3 connected resorts offer different room identities. Springs is adults only and positions itself toward romance and privacy. Gardens and Tented Camp are positioned for families and couples. The important operational point is that this segmentation reduces conflict. Families aren't sharing the same rhythm as honeymooners, and adults-only guests aren't competing with kid energy for quiet. Nayara Tented Camp is the most famous accommodation format in the group's Costa Rica story. Luxury tents, designed to feel like cliffside suites. The point isn't novelty, it's emotional positioning. You feel immersed in nature, but with 5-star control. It's also the property most often singled out in global travel coverage, which helps explain why it became a lightning rod for awards and brand recognition. In Bocas del Toro, the room story shifts to overwater architecture and adults-only privacy. The American Express Fine Hotels Plus Resorts listing emphasizes the property's unique architecture and that overwater aerial beach concept. In the Atacama, rooms are adobe, desert oasis calm, and the setting becomes part of the accommodation identity. Cactus gardens with mountain views. On Easter Island, rooms carry cultural weight. The property's job is to feel rooted, not imported. So across Nayara, rooms aren't inventory, they're formats. Each property sells a specific kind of private sanctuary that matches its landscape. At Nayara, food and beverage functions like the internal rhythm of the resort. In remote luxury, guests don't just want good food, they want reliability, variety, and the sense that dining is part of the experience rather than something to tolerate between activities. In Costa Rica, Nayara's ecosystem supports multi-venue dining across the 3 connected resorts, with the kitchen acting as both a quality engine and a daily pacing tool. The fact that there's a clear executive culinary leadership layer in Costa Rica reinforces how central F&B is to the brand's repeatability. In Bocas del Toro, dining becomes part of the island's story, a sense that you're eating in a private world, with the landscape and water as the atmosphere. In the Atacama, dining is described as rooted in North Chilean staples, infused with modern technique, again, a place-based culinary identity, rather than generic luxury menus. And here's the operational point. Nayara's dining has to work as an emotional stabilizer. Guests are often doing intense nature experiences, volcano hikes, jungle walks, desert excursions, ocean exploration, and then returning for a controlled evening. That evening has to feel warm and safe, not chaotic. Food and beverage becomes the landing gear. Nayara's facilities are designed around restoration and experience, and the sustainability layer is part of the facility story, not separate from it. In Arenal, the facility's rhythm is often framed around geothermal and rainforest immersion, hot springs culture, nature programming, and the feeling of being protected inside wilderness. In broader travel coverage, Nayara's Costa Rica footprint is repeatedly discussed as a landscape where the team has invested in restoration and wildlife habitat, which means facility isn't only spa and pool, it's the land itself. In Bocas del Toro, facilities are built around private island disconnection. The property sells a disconnect from the world promise, which means every facility has to reinforce calm and privacy. In the Atacama, facilities are tied to exploration and recovery, desert excursions paired with spa and rest. On Easter Island, facilities sit inside cultural context. Across the group, the facility strategy is consistent. Create a full guest world so the resort feels complete, and then use service to make it feel intimate. If you work at Nayara, you're operating luxury in environments that don't forgive mistakes. These are remote properties with intense guest expectations. Guests arrive for once-in-a-lifetime nature, but they also expect 5-star rhythm, cleanliness, timing, warmth, privacy, and service recovery when the weather or logistics don't cooperate. What stands out in Nayara's public leadership profiles is the culture of internal progression and mentorship. That from receptionist to operations leader arc at Nayara Springs is not just a nice story. It signals a training culture where standards are taught through repetition and lived experience, not imported scripts. And it signals something else. Nayara is building the kind of culture that luxury hotels need to scale without losing soul, by growing leaders who carry the brand's emotional style. So recruitment at Nayara isn't only about skill, it's about temperament, calm, thoughtful, detail-driven hospitality in places where guests are emotionally raw from nature, exhilarated, tired, overwhelmed, in awe. Staff need to hold that gently. Awards matter in luxury hotels because they are evidence of repeatability, and Nayara has built an unusually strong trophy profile across multiple properties. For example, Nayara Bocas del Toro states it was named #1 resort in Central America in the Condé Nast Traveler 2025 Reader's Choice Awards, a major globally recognized signal. And for Costa Rica, Nayara Tented Camp is heavily decorated in the best resorts in Central America ecosystem. The leading hotels of the world listing for Nayara Tented Camp shows repeated travel plus leisure, #1 hotel in Central America, recognition across multiple years, including 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. The important point isn't look at our awards. The point is what the awards imply: multiple properties, different geographies, and consistent performance signals. That's how a young luxury brand becomes trusted at the highest level. Nayara is a modern luxury hotel group built on a rare promise: turn extreme nature into emotional calm and deliver that calm with 5-star repeatability. Here's the hotel leader's verdict. Nayara doesn't sell rooms, it sells sanctuary, landscapes that feel wild, made livable through service, design, and discipline. And the leadership lesson is simple. When the destination is overwhelming, the hotel's job is to make guests feel safe enough to fully receive it.
Thank you for joining today's episode. If you enjoyed it, the best way to show your appreciation is to follow the podcast so that you never miss our monthly episodes. Farewell, until the next time that you check in to Hotel Leaders.